So, howdy, I'm Carlos, and welcome to Epistemology 101, or let's call it the course on the beginning of infinity, or even the knowledge-based view. So, I think the first question you might ask is, why care about knowledge? Why care about knowledge creation? And the simple answer is that everything that we care about and everything that's interesting depends on it. So, that means, daily life. And here's a little calendar. You couldn't get where you're going. You couldn't meet the people you're going to meet. You couldn't do the jobs you do without knowledge. So every day you depend on it. The human brain is quite a special thing, and it likewise is special because of its ability to create knowledge. Then we've got, let's say, groups of people. How do they interact? What are the better and worse ways to create knowledge in an economic system? In a company, in a political institution. All of these involve many humans interacting. What about a system that doesn't involve humans at all, necessarily? Something like genes. Biological evolution, too. New mutations occur, new species arise, and there, too, we have knowledge and knowledge creation. And on with many other things. If there are aliens out there with 3 eyes rather than 2 and a little antenna, they're creating knowledge. And if they've got spaceships, they use knowledge to make them. AIs, likewise, their abilities depend on the knowledge they create. And whether they're dangerous depends on how good they are at creating knowledge relative to us. And that's a question we'll turn to. Animals too. The system of evolution, biological evolution as a whole is producing knowledge, but individual animals also learn things. And that's worth considering. And again, asking how their methods of knowledge creation compare to human methods. So far, it seems that humans are exceptional. No animal out there is getting on the moon except humans. And so that bears explanation. And that's what I'm interested in, incidentally, as someone who's interested in how the human mind works and how we might engineer one from scratch. So with all of these things, I would group these into a single set of things, which I'd call knowledge-creating systems. So if we look here, despite their differences, despite the fact that daily life and its concerns are quite different from the concerns of just how humans work in general, or groups of humans, or biological systems, or biological evolution as a whole, or aliens, or AIs, or animals. All of these things use, and more importantly, create knowledge. So I'd call these knowledge-laden systems. And again, they seem different on their surface, and there are many differences between them, but there's also a deep similarity in the fact that they all use and create knowledge. Now, why is that interesting? Well, it's interesting because it unifies everything that we have to say about knowledge. And there's only 2 or 3 things, but these basic concerns will apply to every one of these cases. So in the first case, let's ask more or less, what is knowledge? I think the first thing to say about it is that it's information. So I'll just draw some 1s and 0s. These could be A's, T's, C's, and G's in the case of genes, or neuron properties in the case of animals and humans. But however it's stored, you've got information of some kind. We could ask, for all of these systems and any form of knowledge, and there are many forms of knowledge creation that aren't included in this list, we can ask a few questions. We can ask, for instance, given some information here, what are its effects? And we could maybe even get more precise and say, what kinds of computational effects does it have? If there's information, it could be affecting other information. So you could ask that question. How does this information over here affect this information over here? So it could have computational effects. Or maybe it could affect the physical world. In the case of genes, it could affect proteins. And if this is information in a human brain or in an architectural drawing, maybe it would affect the design and building of a bridge, like the Golden Gate. So it could have, this knowledge over here could have physical effects. So that's one question we can ask of any one of these systems. For the knowledge in your mind, in a group institution, in genes and alien minds or AI, the weights of a neural network, an animal brain, we can ask what kind of effects do those bits of knowledge have on other knowledge or on other physical systems? A second kind of question we can ask is not what happens, not what are the results of some knowledge, what are the effects of it, but what are the causes of it? How is it created? How does it come to be? So we can ask maybe about its history, all of the events that led to it, rather than its future over here, let's say. And in that case, here's, I think, the biggest idea for epistemology. And this comes from Karl Popper and following on Darwin, which is the idea that no matter what we're talking about, if a system is improving somehow, it has to be doing two things. The first of which is that it needs to be, if it's starting with something, let's say here. So we're trying to explain the idea of improvement. And so if this knowledge is here and it's better than some old thing, that's because we had some old thing and somehow or other it generated some new things. So I'll just draw some squares and triangles in different shapes. And somehow we got from something that used to exist, some kind of process, to new things, potentially better things. So whenever we're explaining knowledge creation, we need to say there's some process of variation or generation, whatever you can call it. This is necessary. If there's no way of creating new ideas, then there's no way of creating better ideas. If there's no way of creating new mutations, there's no way of creating better mutations. So that's one of the two key processes that leads to the creation of knowledge. The other one is that if you're creating new things, not all of them are going to be good. So in this case, suppose the X was really good, but everything else wasn't. Well, in that case, you need to find a way to get rid of all the things that are bad. And so you can almost imagine this sort of condensing process or filtering process where things pass different little filters and the good ones make it through. So we have this pair of processes, this sort of variation, this chaotic creation of new things, some of which are good, some of which aren't. And then over here we have selection, finding the good things in the set of all the things we've created and getting rid of the bad ones. So if we're asking again, what is knowledge? It's information. We can ask about its effects. We can ask about its causes. And in particular, there are two. You got to create new things. And if not all of them are good, you need a way to get rid of the bad ones. So you need selection. So these are the key processes of knowledge creation. Some of the key questions you can look at. Now, that's interesting, but the really cool feature of epistemology, I think, is the lens it gives you on how to improve things. So if you're interested in progress or systems that make progress, one of the things you'll want to do is compare, let's say, humans to other animals, or one business model to another, or one economic institution to another. So let's try and compare, or see how we might compare different systems. Now that we have this more precise view, this more low-level view of what knowledge creation is about. So some of the things we could ask are about the limits of some process. So if we have humans or AIs or aliens or animals, can they do anything, or are there some limits on what they can do? So if we think about that, a bad system, a weak system, would have some pretty narrow limits on what it can do. So if we imagine all the things that are possible, then it couldn't do very many of them. It would have a very small set of things it was capable of. So animals, for instance, might be more like this. They have this narrow red region of things they can do, but all the things out here and the rest of the circle, like launch ships to the moon, they can't do, and they have no way of getting to do. Meanwhile, some system that was good, stronger, then that might be more like humans. All the things that are capable or possible of happening anytime by anybody, let's suppose we could do all of them. I think that's the case for humans. So everything that's possible, we can do. Not now, but there's nothing that we can never do. So eventually we can get there. So that's one kind of way now that we can assess different systems. We could say for any one of them, can it do these things? Can it not do these things? What is the scope of its possible action, both right now and into the indefinite future? Because there are things that, again, we can't do now as humans, but we very soon will be able to do. That's because we created new knowledge. So that's one way we might compare different knowledge-creating systems. Another way we'd compare them would be efficiency. So for a given set of resources, what can these things do? What can they discover? And so on. So you can imagine different search processes which might be more or less efficient. So if I drew a very inefficient system, the path it takes to some solution might be very circuitous and long and waste a lot of time and resources. Meanwhile, a better system might be able to quickly hone in on the right idea much more efficiently. So I think if you were to set, a random set of monkeys to typing Shakespeare, you get something more like this first case. And humans, obviously, in the case of Shakespeare, more like the second case. Straight to a solution. Or not straight, but much more efficient. A third way might be speed. So again, if you're interested in progress and institutions and companies and that sort of thing, you can ask, what way of organizing our society or company would allow us to make progress faster? And so you'd want your curve of progress not to be flat or even a little bit upward there. You'd want it to be, some kind of exponential rapid progress. So you want something like that. You could also ask other questions like of political systems. You might ask, how stable is it? So you could ask about stability. Does progress continue indefinitely, or does it get snuffed out? So if you're here, you end up with some kind of, in the course of bumpiness, something you can't get past, and your society just dies? Or is it something more like what we seem to have, where despite all kinds of problems, you nevertheless keep on trucking indefinitely? So these are all kinds of ways that you might compare all these knowledge-creating systems. And overall, the idea here is just to give you something of a knowledge-based view. See that all around you, there are systems that create and use knowledge, and they're all unified, as you see in these key processes. They all depend on information. That information can have effects on other information or other physical systems. And very importantly, that information came from somewhere. It's very special if it's capable of doing anything important. And you have to ask, how did it get to be that way? It got to be that way through variation and selection, the creation of new ideas, new options, new mutations, and the elimination of bad ones. And then if we look over here, we can ask questions of AIs and AGIs and everything else, and ask, what are their limits, if any? How efficient are they at finding solutions? If it takes them 1 billion years to find a solution, it doesn't really matter that they could do it eventually. They can't do it in practice, whereas let's say humans maybe can. If you care about the speed of progress, this will be of interest to you. If you care about the stability of progress, this will be of interest to you. So anyway, that is, I think, my best attempt at an introduction to the ideas of the beginning of infinity and epistemology more generally. So stay tuned for more. Adios.